Righty-ho, I have done all my ablutions there in the river. The main reason that no, having for 10 years, no, 14 actually, 14 years, organically, meaning see who comes along, see who one develops a warm, mutual relationship affinity with. And see if they may be able to be useful bridges to bolster a child, well known in the community. Yeah, yesterday I don't give personal reference, but to meet a 40-year-old or to spend time with a 40-year-old woman and her father, such a great close relationship. Yeah, I've known that. Society's known that for forever. A woman who has a good relationship with her father is always different. And that sounds horrible to those who haven't had that. That's not the point. The point is, what are the simple ground rules for society to pass on to next generation? And of course the latter day bossocracy, in fact I thought of a different word yesterday, fascistocracy. It's not nice to call people fascists, but if I ever say fascist, I mean fascist light. But it is a kind of light fascism when you are a so-called leader or the shared lexicon is hard. I use the phrase good burger. In other words, the one of the local people who are looked up to as mature to turn to when there are issues. Those people may be social workers, librarians, town councillors, these kinds of people. Those kinds of people simply will never say, because there's risk in it, hey, your neighbour 3 doors up, they've got a bit of an issue going on in their family. Just try and wing over that kid, and you never know, it might help out. No, we can't say that. We just simply can't say that. And these people, the bossocracy, call them what you want, and it is a kind of fascism light, because the notion that society can afford to that it has almost subcontracted the roles of simple common sense, being there, bolstering, augmenting other people with some very simple this thing called parental alienation. I mean, it's there in bloody Dickens. It's been around for several centuries. So we should have ways of dealing with it. I've done it. I've assisted other families, other parents of both genders attempting to bridge. I bridged at great length 7 years ago, 8 years ago, a couple who were separated, different countries. I'm not in the mood for this actually this morning, but there we go. Who were in different countries, and he had terminal, well, it was obviously going to be terminal cancer, to try and bridge those two people with 2 kids. I even arranged for his parents, who were wealthy and lived in Switzerland, they weren't aristocrats or anything, to pay a stipend for the mother for her to bring the kids back to this country. Oh, there was something like 6 and 8, and to pay her expenses, and categorically provide written assurances that there'll be no court or anything like that, no action on any past perceived misbehaviour. I mean, these things are simple, common sense, straightforward, yet nobody can do it. Ever. It's astonishing. And it's almost like my own life for 14 years, but particularly for 13 years, it's been almost like an experiment. Would anybody ever suggest they're going to provide that in respect of my kid, who lots of people could see was used as a weapon, purely against me, as a mad form of bizarre, 6 years later, revenge that I'd won an important court case that helped many others, and most important of all, nobody understands this, and it was just purely a side issue, by opening up privacy, it's the wrong word, the default to secrecy at the level of a child. That means if something, if one, there's a little town 2 miles down here that's supposedly owned by one person. I don't know if that's entirely true, but if someone were writing things, well, it used to be in the press, but now online, if someone were writing things, the truth, you go down to that town, half the time it stinks of sewers. So if you were writing that, that man who owns that town may try some sideways silencing of you, retribution. I mean, there are much more evocative examples, in other words, where people, or even animals, are involved, where the citizen may need to speak out. And it's astonishing how they try and silence you. I mean, if you're, okay, here's a really good made-up example. If you were a person writing about that disgraceful situation with all this sewerage, it's not all this sewerage, it's some sewerage is leaking into that harbour area, and you were a trader who was paying, round the back of course, I don't mean surreptitiously, I mean you're paying an agency or whatever for your pitch fees down there in the harbour, that man or his agent or his solicitor may, round the back, try and have your tenancy in your market trading area removed. That's how it works. By using a child case as it's a root matter to stop to change the culture, that the citizen generally it shall not be thought a negative thing that the citizen is speaking publicly about negative issues. My own particular case, yes, there were negative things. It took far too long. There was nothing. There's a stack of paperwork this big, but there's nothing in it. That's just that's oppressing the citizen. The conclusion of the case was exactly as it started 3 years earlier. That's repressive. That's oppressive. So it's the culture is that the citizen should be able to speak out, go public, unless there's an extremely good reason, in any area of civic society, and the need to speak truth to power, which is a fancy statement for somebody's misbehaving, usually somebody in authority or with power or money, and you've got to speak out. That's what democracy's been founded on for hundreds of years. And that's why a child case was used to attack that at the very foundation. In other words, you set a precedent right down at they call it the hardest cases. So if you set a precedent at the level of the hardest cases, then that case gets used in other areas of law and culture. It's an evolution in respect of just readjusting civic society. And everybody just makes it personal. And Britain's just such a twat. because the education and the culture, the crappy television has just turned everybody's heads to cabbage. So be it.